Welcome to the Campaign Trend Podcast, where you're joining in on a conversation with the entrepreneurs, operatives, and experts who make professional politics happen. I'm your host, Eric Wilson. If you've worked on a campaign in the last few cycles, you already know this. Political texting is no longer a novelty, it's infrastructure. But it's also getting harder. Rules are changing, inboxes are filtering more aggressively, and voters are a lot less patient than they used to be. My guest today is Phil Gordon, founder of Prompt.io. Phil came to political tech from a pretty unconventional background, which we'll talk about, professional poker, and now runs one of the core platforms campaigns rely on to reach voters by text. Today, we're talking about where political texting really stands heading into the 2026 midterms, what's happening with 10DLC and carrier enforcement, how Apple and inbox filtering are changing the game, and what campaigns need to do to make sure that texts don't just get delivered, but actually work. All right, Phil, I got to ask you, if our listeners recognize you, it's because you've had a legendary career in the poker world, almost $3 million in lifetime tournament winnings, a best-selling book, hosting Celebrity Poker Showdown. And I think poker really is a better metaphor for politics than chess. A lot of people go to the chess metaphor, but
yeah.
I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. But poker and politics are both games where you can make the right decision based on the information you have and still not get the desired outcome. And I say that as someone who's worked on a lot of losing campaigns. So what is the one lesson or insight as a world-class poker player that you think our campaigners need to hear and take on board?
Wow. Let's see. Well, I think the key to winning in poker and actually winning in a lot of different things is the concept of selective aggression. In poker, you want to be very selective about the hands that you choose to play. And most of the time you should just be folding, right? You don't have a profitable hand, so you just let it go. But once you do identify that a hand is profitable or an issue is profitable for a campaign, right? You really go for it. You put a lot of chips in the pot. You put a lot of pressure on your opponents. So when I'm playing poker, I like to think like, wait. Okay, this is a great hand. Push. And I think, I think that translates pretty well. I think, for a lot of fields, this is applicable. If you wait for a great opportunity and then move all in, right, you stay on message. You don't flounder around. You're not always, shifting from one issue to the other. And you're really exploiting the profitability of your opponent and for the issue that you found. So I really like that concept of selective aggression. I think it serves me well at the poker table for 15 years, and maybe it can be helpful there too. I think another thing that people usually ask me about is like poker tells. And, in poker, it's really interesting. A player that's acting weak is usually strong, and a player that's acting strong is usually weak. Not many people know this. In fact, I told my president, Faraz Sukanaj, about this just recently, but in 2004, at the height of the poker boom, I was actually asked to be a pundit for the 2004 vice presidential debate, analyzing Cheney and Edwards for their poker tells during the debate. So it was pretty interesting, and
I
not
bet
something I
Dick
ever
Cheney
thought
was
I
a
would be
hard guy
asked
to
to do.
read.
But yeah, I was back in politics in 2004.
It's hilarious. So I do want to highlight two lessons there. One, we skipped over that, but sometimes folding is the best strategy.
Most of the time.
Most of the times.
Yeah.
And same thing in politics. So most of the times your outcome is already determined before a single vote is cast. You're looking at, district makeup, political environment, things like that. And there's some wisdom in, hey, we need to field a team anyway. It's not quite like.
I'm not saying give up. What I'm saying is, look for a profitable.
I am. I'm definitely saying that, Phil. Just like be very clear about what your objectives are.
Yeah. I think but once you find that profitable message, stick to it, right? Like you hear campaign strategists all the time say, "Please stay on message," and I think what that gets to is, hey, we've identified this is your vein of gold, right? That this particular issue is really resonating. If you stay on message, you'll continue to profit from it. When you stray from that message and start, looking around the landscape for other things to comment on, you dilute your message. Yeah. So anyway,
and that's a really important point as well, and I want to underline that as well, because a lot of times I see our operatives, campaigners, candidates, they assume that we are living and breathing this, or that your voters are living and breathing this in the same way that political operatives are, and so the idea of a stump speech seems to be kind of increasingly foreign. This idea that, hey, there are people in the back of the room who know when to fire up the bus because they hear you get to the same part in your stump speech. We feel like because we're in this 24-hour world, always creating content, that we've got to come up with new content. But we see from some of the greats like President Trump that you play the hits and go for those.
Yeah.
So, okay. I think it's fair to say that the leap from World Series of Poker to political texting doesn't appear to be an obvious move. So walk us through that. How did you come to found Prompt.io?
So I'm a computer scientist by training. Prompt.io is actually my fifth startup. And I've had a couple that have gone extraordinarily well. I've had a couple that have not gone so well. And Prompt is the last and final chapter in my technology saga.
Never say never.
Yeah, well, we're 10 years old, still growing like crazy, getting great results, and I have no intention of ever doing anything other than Prompt.io from here on out. Prompt.io was originally built as a general purpose communication system for enterprise companies. We had Fortune 5,000 companies using our platform to text message for customer service and for sales. We had no political customers until 2018. Thankfully, Congressman Will Hurd somehow found us and contacted us and got great results with the platform, introduced me around to a bunch of his colleagues. And 2 years later, we pivoted the whole company to political advocacy and nonprofit and basically got rid of all the enterprise customers. But, the nice thing about coming from enterprise that if you can handle Fortune 5,000 requirements in terms of security and scalability and resiliency and raw feature set, the political use case is pretty easy in comparison.
Yeah, the egos might be a little bit bigger. So what were
you haven't talked to some of my Fortune 5,000 customers.
So what was the opportunity that you saw, prior to getting into the political, but what was it about texting? Because it always seems we've had text since the 1980s, but only in kind of the mid 2010s did it really take off as a marketing channel. What were you seeing there that put you ahead of the curve?
Yeah, so I think it's the immediacy of it is really interesting, right? Like an issue comes up within just a few minutes, you can be spreading your spreading your take on that issue to far and wide, right? And there's no other real mechanism in politics that enables that, right? Emails aren't getting opened. Everyone knows the email open rate is abysmal. You can't put together a campaign commercial in time. You can't make those phone calls in time, right? And so it really is that immediacy that I think is one of the most interesting pieces of the puzzle for texting. And the people that curate their lists and they get, really great supporter lists, when something does happen, you can hit that list, within just a few minutes and really make an impact right away.
And I think we now stand at kind of like political texting is just assumed to be part of the toolbox. And It's been really fascinating. We do a lot of post-election polling at the Center for Campaign Innovation, and we actually saw that crossover where it went from, phone calls were about 2/3 of the contact, and then a third were texts. Then it evened out in 2020, where it was about texts and phones were even. And now we've seen it cross over where basically phones are collapsing. And so there's so much volatility or upheaval in the political texting space. As we're looking ahead to the 2026 midterms, where does it stand? What has changed since 2020 or 2024? what's is it something new or something old? What are we seeing?
Yeah. So I think it's important to understand that, text is a tool that when used properly can be extremely effective, but when used improperly can actually hurt a campaign. And there are lots of folks out there that are using it well. They use it early and often in the cycle. They deliver truly personalized content to their audience, right? They offer something of value in their text messages instead of always just asking for money. I think people get really burned out on the, three times matching offer and, help me now and always just asking for donations, right? You got to be able to offer them something of value before you have the opportunity to ask them for something. I think tone is really important. I think consistency is really important. And I think that the campaigns that truly think of text as a two-way communication mechanism and not just a vehicle for blasting out a message, but they take the time to engage with their audience that replies both negatively and positively, those are the folks that, that get the best results with the platform and with the medium. And of course, there are tons of people who don't do that too. We try not to partner with those kind of folks, because they're going to not be around very often or for very long, right? We want to have really long-term relationships with our customers. So, follow those best practices. I think you're still going to get really strong results via text in a way that you can't get in any other medium. But it does come with the caveat that if you do it wrong, you can actually hurt your campaign and not help it.
You're listening to the Campaign Trend Podcast. I'm speaking with Phil Gordon, founder and CEO of Prompt.io. So when we started this year, we were really worried about, well, we hadn't heard about it yet, but obviously Apple's iOS 26 really created a scare in the industry. And it did end up bringing some significant changes to how Apple handles text, and we know political donors over-index for Apple devices. I think the worst did not come to pass with iOS, but what have we learned so far? It's been a couple of months since it's been out in the wild. What have you guys learned?
Yeah, so everyone was worried about this, right? The changes were unexpected. The impacts were unknown. The good news is it's had very little impact. I think, most of our customers have seen maybe a 2 to 5% at the most impact in engagement rates. The iOS 26 changes are not on by default. And, for those who aren't familiar, right, for people who have installed the iOS 26 update, some messages from unknown senders might go into, a special inbox. But, as I said, it's not on by default. You got to opt into that service being on with your phone. And then, it really hasn't had much.
It doesn't work that well either. I still get a lot of unwanted texts.
Yeah. So, it's everyone was worried about it, but I don't think there's anything to be worried about right now.
Well, good. And that's something that we're going to keep tracking and just seeing the adoption, and hopefully it remains kind of an opt-in thing. One of the really interesting things that we saw is that that urgency, that time sensitive, can be really helpful. Obviously, you can't abuse that too much. Phil, by now, our listeners are familiar with 10DLC, carrier registration, campaign verify, throughput limits, all of the hoops that a campaign has to jump through to send text. Do you think that these regulations are achieving their goals of protecting consumers and from those bad actors that we were mentioning, or is this just more headaches for the good guys?
Yeah, well, we're big fans of 10DLC and the compliance process. In fact, I think I know Prompt.io was the first company in the political space to offer fully registered 10DLC. We adopted it right out of the gate. We went all in, so to speak, to use my poker terminology, on 10DLC, and I'm glad we did. yeah, it's a little pain in the butt to get your website compliant and all that, right? But once the website's compliant, we're seeing very, very fast turnaround times for registration, right? Certainly under a day. In one instance last week, we went from, initial registration to texting in 2 hours. So, if you're doing it right and you've got the right team in place to get these registrations through and the right upstream partners and, a good reputation in the industry, you can get things done really, really quickly, and help the campaigns turn around, is more or less in under a day.
Yeah,
As far as bad actors go, I don't think they're using 10DLC much at all. I think if you use 10DLC improperly and you're sending poor messages, or spammy kind of messages using the 10DLC system, you get shut down pretty quickly and blocked. I think, one of the things I'm hearing is that a lot of the bad actors are using what's called a SIM box or a SIM farm. These are like, hundreds of little SIM cards that they plug into some board, and they're utilizing that for outbound texting. Totally illegal. A friend in the industry last week told me that T-Mobile just shut down 2 million of those SIM card phone numbers in an effort to start battling, against these scammers. Um, but as long as the scammers get a return on their investment, they're going to scam. So it's a stain on the industry. I wish they could shut down those SIM farms 100% and everything could be 10 DLC compliant and level the playing field. But it's always going to be a battle between those that do things the right way, like Prompt.io, and those that don't.
Yeah, it's the cat and mouse game that we're all familiar with, whether it's email or cybersecurity or SMS. It never ends. The mice always get smarter. A lot of campaigns still treat SMS texting as a volume play of
Yeah.
I've got to get as big a list as possible, send as many texts, send it as frequently as possible, and they're focusing on the metrics of did it send, yes or no.
Yeah.
And so from your perspective, what separates campaigns whose texts actually get read and acted upon and engaged with from those that they technically deliver but probably getting ignored or certainly not driving people to action?
Yeah. I think the key is having great data and using that data to deliver timely, personalized messaging. You got to think, okay, I got to send the right message to the right person at the right time. It has to be authentic in voice, right? And the message has to truly deliver value before you ask for something in return. I think that's really, really important. Like I said before, the whole gimme money thing with every message is rarely effective. And they see a very low quality of engagement when they use that tactic. It reminds me, we recently did a webinar with one of my true heroes, Dr. Robert Cialdini.
It was
If you're not
amazing.
familiar with
Everyone should go check it out. Yeah.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy. He wrote the seminal work on this called "Influence: The Science of Persuasion." He's like a legend in this field, right? And one of the key principles in influence is what he calls reciprocity. So people are more willing to do what you ask of them if you give them something first, right? And so campaigns need to put themselves in that mindset, I think, and utilize Dr. Robert Cialdini's principles. Give the recipient of these messages something before you ask for your donation, right? You can give them a clear position. You can give them an invitation to a rally. You can show them a video and ask them for their rating of it, right? But you give first, and then you have earned the right to ask. And a lot of people don't do that, and I think it's a real mistake. The webinar with Dr. Cialdini, where we talk about all 6 of his principles, is on our website. And if you're out there running campaigns and you don't know Dr. Robert Cialdini's book,
Go read it. Yeah.
do yourself a favor, get it. I'll even buy you one, right? Email me, and I'm happy to buy you a copy of his book. But you really, really need to read Dr. Cialdini's work. I think it's It's been a real influence on me throughout my career, and I think everyone should really take the opportunity to learn from the best.
You and I agree completely on that because I actually have a blog post over at campaigntrend.com where we go through the principles and how they apply to campaigns. And I
Why
think
don't we get Dr. Cialdini on your podcast? I'd
I
be
would
happy to make the
appreciate
introduction.
the introduction. Yeah. And the key thing, and this touches on being a good actor, is that he teaches these principles of influence and persuasion that really hack into the operating system of our brains,
Yeah.
but they have to be done respectfully,
Yes.
and with permission from the individual, and he does a good job of making sure that we're not doing tricks. And so I think that's where you see a lot of the bad actors in texting
Yeah.
is they say, oh, this is for the Trump response fund or whatever, and it has nothing to do with Donald Trump, or it's helping Republicans, and it's actually a scam pack. And so it's trying to apply these principles, but they didn't read the second half of the book.
Yeah. He's all about ethical influence, and I think that's really important, especially in our field.
Yeah, if you want to have any sort of longevity or being around for a long time, I suppose it's you can cheat at poker one time, but you don't get invited back to the game. Maybe if you've got an NBA game, I don't know. um,
I've
so
played in a few of those games, and I can tell you, when you get cheated, I've gotten cheated too. When you get cheated in one of those games, it is not fun.
yikes.
There is, no way for you to really prove it, and they still make you pay. You really feel it in the pocketbook after the fact.
Yeah, in my mind, the cheating poker game is really the Wild West saloon where you've got your 6-shooter and the music stops. But I guess they've gotten a little bit more sophisticated in the intervening decades. One of the biggest concerns I hear from campaigners is backlash. The opt-outs, the complaints, or just the voter fatigue from too many texts. How should campaigns think about this in a realistic kind of non-panicked way? Because obviously, anytime we send something out, people are going to say, "I just don't want to hear about any politics." But if you've got a good ROI on your program, it's clearly working. What's the balance?
Well, look, opt-out compliance is at the heart of every great texting program and platform, right? Candidates that don't use best practices in this regard, they are not welcome on our platform. We won't service them. It all comes down, as I said before, sending the right message to the right person at the right time and being respectful of people's wishes, right? People that don't want to receive these messages shouldn't be receiving them. If someone says, take me off your list, even if it's not the absolute correct stop, right? That should be automatic with every platform, including ours, right? To remove them from the list. Any request to be taken off the list should be taken seriously, removed from the list, never text them again, and make sure that you're following those best practices. And again, if we find folks on the platform that aren't utilizing those best practices, we won't service them.
Yeah. And I think that's the key to keeping this channel alive for campaigns and especially in the age of algorithms where so much of political outreach is filtered out. We've got to save it for everyone, or we have this real tragedy of the commons where it just kind of ruins it for everybody.
Yeah. You might also look at some new channels too. I'll make an announcement here, but
All right,
first
breaking
time
news.
ever. We recently just released something that we're really excited about called mobile wallet cards.
Cool.
And mobile wallet cards, if you've ever been to the airport, you had the little ticket on on your phone, and you get a message when you get to the phone or when you get to the airport, oh, you've been gate C or C13 or whatever it is, right? So that's a push notification to the mobile wallet card, and we think this is going to be a really interesting and important channel for 2026 and 2028. You get folks to download and install your campaigns or your party or your interest groups mobile wallet card. It lives right there in the wallet like a membership card to your gym or like that airline pass. And interestingly, you can update the content of that card anytime you want. And you can send a push notification that shows up like a native push notification message directly to cardholders. And it's near instantaneous and there are no carriers involved. So we're really excited about mobile wallet cards. Be happy to give anyone a demo if interested, but it's going to be, I think, one of those things that is potentially disruptive, and we're really excited about it.
Yeah, that's really cool. Far as alluded to that, he didn't tell me what it was, so I'm
Yeah.
actually really excited that it's the mobile wallet stuff because I've a couple years ago played around with stuff and it just wasn't really intuitive to use. But I trust you guys have figured out a great way to make it easy for campaigns to manage and get installed and things like that. And
Yeah.
I think that'll be
And we're the first in the industry to offer this service. So it really should be very, very interesting. And in early conversations with customers that have seen it, they are ready to get going. I think it's going to be a really compelling channel and a new way to think about constituent engagement.
Yeah. Is there ability for it to be kind of location aware at all?
Yeah,
Or
you can do that. If a constituent has the card on their phone and they get within 500 feet of a given location, you can have it pop up a message, right? So,
I'm thinking about
one of the
early
things that might
voting
be
or voting
interesting, right? You
guides.
could
Yeah.
program the local school. If you're running for school board or if the education is one of the cornerstones of your campaign, right? You could utilize that great data that you have to have on every constituent, program each individual card with the local school nearest to that constituent. And when they get within 500 feet of it, hey, do you know that I support, funding for Shorewood Elementary School or wherever it happens to be, right? It's one of those really interesting things that there are a lot of different possibilities with these mobile wallet cards that are tremendously new, innovative, and might be able to move the needle for campaigns that are in one of these 50-50 kind of races.
Yeah, I've already got the ideas going, so looking forward to checking it out. My thanks to Phil Gordon for a great conversation. You can learn more about prompt.io and Phil in our show notes. I'll link to the webinar with Dr. Cialdini as well as some other resources. You know that if this episode made you a little bit smarter or gave you something to think about, or you certainly learned about something new, all we ask is that you share it with a friend or colleague. You look smarter in the process. More people find out about the show. It's a win-win all around. Remember to subscribe to the Campaign Trend Podcast wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode, and visit our website, campaigntrend.com, for even more newsletters and blogs. And with that, I'll say we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. Thanks, Phil. That